If you're seeking a conversation that combines some of the most beautiful, empowering, insightful aspects of Christian thought, of Buddhist thought, of the hero's journey, and a beautifully wide assortment of other spiritual truths and modalities and pieces of wisdom, the following conversation with the incredible author and wise sage, Mr. Bob Peck, is going to really add a lot to your day. My name is Jackson Strong, honored to be your host here for the Golden Frequency here with AUREA, and it is my great joy and honor to bring these incredible voices to the world in an even greater way. So, Bob, thank you so much for being part of this, and here on the amazing land here at Reimagine Ranch outside of Austin, Texas. And again, it is my great joy to be bringing this conversation to you. So I invite you to quiet your mind, open your heart, as the wise sage Ram Dass would say, and to experience a beautiful conversation with a really extraordinary man. So, Bob, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that. And we greatly appreciate your presence, and enjoy. Great, mysterious creator, infinite love and wisdom by any other name. Appreciate you bringing me and my brother Bob together here, and Zach, in this amazing land, this beautiful little studio, and just praying for the insights and the eyes and the ears and the mouth to express and hear the next level of wisdom and love and peace that's meant to come through today. So praying into my highest self and Bob's highest self to be free to express and to tune in and to hear your voice and the voice of the divine guides that have come throughout time and history here in this beautiful realm to guide us into our greatest expressions and embodiments, and to help others to do the same. Thank you so much. I love you, appreciate you. And in the Christos Sophia current, I say, aho, hooray, hallelujah, yes. Anything you want to say, Bob?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How do you follow that? May we mirror the divine back to anyone who stumbles upon this.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, here with Mary and Bob Peck, we have the setting for an incredible conversation. And if the camera shakes occasionally, I invite you to bear with us as my rambunctious dog Mary rambles around in our studio here. So here with the amazing author and a being that I've really enjoyed and appreciated for a long time, and really glad that we got to meet briefly at a party a little while ago. And I've just...
A couple of parties now.
Yeah, right. So I've truly...
You're in some great spots.
Yeah, totally. And Mary, we're going to relax just a little bit here. So the embodiment you express, and the place of equanimity and peace. And I think that peace is probably the greatest spiritual state that we can attain to, and the way that you express that and have gone through such an incredible depth of study. It's so obvious, the depth of study that you've gone to, and the devotion. And I think that's...
I'm a big book nerd, is what you're saying. Thanks, Jackson.
You're welcome. That's a great compliment. And the people that impress me most in life are those that I can really see devotion in. And that's a character trait that I see really clearly in you. And I'm really eager to dive in today, and really grateful to be here with you, man. Thanks
so much, man. Thanks for having me. It's a beautiful space you guys have. I'm loving your work as well, and I'm loving your intention for this community to come. Very cool tour and Wizard of Water that we just left a few minutes ago. And you center a lot of your work around intentionality and connection, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. And thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm also working through it too. I'm
chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, exactly. It's peaks and valleys, man. But it's been about 2 decades for me, I guess, of reading the mystics, and something's got to give, at some point. I started really, I guess, in high school reading Buddhist texts and philosophy texts and things like that. Went to UT for film and religion, so I got my 2 useless degrees. And
I disagree, but I'm with you, and I get it.
And made some documentaries in my 20s and put a book out a few years ago, and just kind of, trying to follow your bliss, the Campbellian mantra. And there's a line that's kind of, I guess, been guiding me the last couple of years, which is the Rumi, as you start to walk on the way appears.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, I think in like kind of secular, neuroscience optimization, productivity, Graham, there's all these kind of like tools and like ways to like zero in on things, and like I do honor those. And also there's this like spontaneity, and there's this kind of like depth of listening to yourself and listening to what's coming to you, and we're all doing our best to try to listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
and put one step in the front in the next one.
Yeah. And setting that intention here to really hear what's most profound, that wants to come through most. And you mentioned the Campbellian view, and shout out Joseph Campbell,
Yeah.
You wild, amazing, mystic soul, and God, I just love that.
Mythic King.
Oh God, that interview with him and Bill Moyers, man,
It's crazy.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
It's like a lullaby at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just go through Power Myth and before I crash out tonight. He read. Have you seen those pictures of him with the stacks of books?
No, but I'm sure it's a shipload.
It is. He had to, in I think it was the 40s. Or it was, I guess, World War II type shit. Was he refused to sign some kind of contractual obligation at universities, and so he didn't do that. He couldn't get a job, and so despite his expertise, his principled, intention to not, succumb to that kind of McCarthy era control, he went to a cabin, not unlike kind of what you guys are doing here. He's literally in the woods reading books for I think it was 9 hours a day for a couple of years.
It shows.
There's literally pictures of him with stacks of books and very stoic living. And I think the draft of Here of a Thousand Phases came out of that period. And so he's able, in that Moyers interview, he's able to kind of go, oh, well, that's like this origin story. That's like that, it's like, because he's read everything.
Yeah.
So it's a good reading is cool. Highly recommend.
Yes. And when you reflect on his work, to go a little deeper there, what has impacted you most? Where do you find the most power and insight from what you've gotten from Campbell?
Well, he's one of the best around, a big part of what I'm trying to do in terms of kind of the cohesive quality of spiritual traditions and faith traditions. Yogananda also is very good at that, who called essentially the mystics or the esoteric traditions to be kind of like pearls on the string. The exoteric traditions are different, and let's not kid ourselves. There's a book actually called God Is Not One by Stephen Prothero, who's a religious scholar, and examining, no, Islam's about submission and Judaism is about rules, and and kind of distinguishing it. But that's the exoteric tradition, right? The esoteric tradition sounds the same, man. They're all the. I don't want to say necessarily deeper insight, because I think the exoteric and the community-based and the institutional even based religious traditions do have value, and they do have kind of infrastructure in larger societies, but they just can so often become a mediator for people between ourselves and God, and how preposterous that is. And the mystics are just kind of like the spontaneous, they're the writers and poets and drunks and dancers and that see it in everything, and
Speaking of Alan Watts as the mystic drunk.
Totally. That's right. You're validating my point beautifully.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it's they're real, and they sound, you read Anandamayi Ma, for example, who's this amazing Hindu saint, female, divine mother kind of incarnation type person. She sounds a lot like Milarepa, the Tibetan yogi from 1,000 years ago. There's this point where the non-dual and the mystic traditions have such a similarity and a parallel that it's impossible to deny. And so Campbell, I think, does that as well as anybody.
Yeah. It's the fluency that he's had, and like the constellation of wisdom. It's just like, and the thing that rocked my world about his stuff the most when I first got into here with the Thousand Faces was like the template. And it's like, it's the same story over and over and over. And either that's like a fact of reality, it's like woven into reality from this like ancient super civilization or something. Where do you go with some of the more, call it Atlantean traditions, or like beyond what our accepted historical frame is? Where do you go with that?
I'm open to that. I liked that Graham Hancock show. It's not really my expertise, but I'm intrigued. I mean, Plato mentioned Atlantis.
Yeah,
he was worth
pretty
reading.
Good source.
Yeah, decent source there. I think. Yeah, what's interesting about Campbell is it's all symbolic, right? It's just all a symbol.
Really? You gotta really.
The young son of the king, something happens. It's kind of like an RPG almost, right? It's like the first scene of the RPG on like PlayStation 1 is like the village burns down. It's like you're farming in the meadow and it's all nice, and then the bandits come and it's all to hell, and
shout out Seven Samurai if you're a fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Kurosawa,
my God, best movie of all time.
Totally, dude.
God.
So, yeah. Oh my God, I can't believe you mentioned Kurosawa before me. That's
I won.
This is gonna be strap in.
Oh, good day. And yeah, so like, and definitely Kurosawa movie night. Shout out anyone watching this. Totally here for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
13 hours of consecutive Kurosawa. I'm all about that life.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll watch Yojimbo twice.
God, it's so good. High and Low, and the modern ones are also great.
And then watch the westerns, because they would steal from those guys.
Yeah, anyway, same movie.
Same movie. But something happens. What are you going to do about it? I think there's kind of this secular, again, maybe I'm just riffing on that worldview right now, but like that everything's supposed to be perfect, or that there's this kind of harmonious plateau we're all supposed to be working towards, where things get gradually easier and easier. And I don't think that's how it works. I think it's really, Pema Chodron, for example, when things fall apart, it's like things fall apart and then they're put back together again. And then they fall apart again.
Yeah.
And then it's actually the nature of this plane of existence, probably. That's what the non-dualists say. This is the duality world. And so thinking that it's supposed to all be this perfectly, neatly portrayed type of thing is ain't it.
Yeah.
And these stories help us.
Yeah, totally. And Paul Chek's perspective on some of that.
Yeah, he's
school.
Great.
Yeah. Shout out Paul. My God. And the spirit gym philosophy. And there's a video I saw him a little while ago talking about how the soul seeks polarity, and that as we experience great things in life, inevitably our soul that chose to come here wanted all of it. We're in the bliss, we're in the Ananda land, we're in the joy of blissful whateverness. And it's like, yeah, I'm a little bored. Like, I want to spice it up. I need some sriracha on my soul here. So I'm going to come down here and like draw in some polarized experiences in order to activate the next level of the gym, the next level of the school, the next level of drawing forth that heroic character. And when you look back at your life and the moments that have tested you, or fatherhood, is a major one you might want to go into, is, how is that? How do you find the capacity to draw forward like your gifts and greatness and goodness in the midst of challenging circumstances?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if that's true, what you said before.
Okay, challenge it. Yeah, where do you go with that?
Well, there is this idea, and like Ram Dass is, such a huge part of my heart, and so many of us, and like he's like your teacher's favorite teacher, kind of person. So I love almost everything he did, but he kind of helped perpetuate that around like this plane is God experiencing itself, and I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
The non-dualists, which non-duality just means not two. The non-dual traditions, I mentioned that there's this like beautiful cohesive quality to the mystic esoteric traditions earlier. Well, there are some differences, and the non-dualists tend to see through this world's specialness, if you will.
What do you mean by that?
Milarepa calls it a mist. Rumi calls it a dream. Dream is a very prominent, image used in that type of language. But there's this kind of glorification sometimes within spiritual traditions of this plane that I'm not necessarily antagonizing, but I'm just poking at it, because it seems like to me the men and women throughout history who I was referencing to, the mystics, the kind of the esoteric saints of the world faith traditions, they all, what a very cohesive quality to their teaching is that this place ain't that big a deal. And I find that incredibly liberating and useful in a world that is constantly taking itself so seriously and constantly kind of glorifying it. I mean, I think, one of the easiest kind of, whiffs or whatever you want to call it would be like, for example, the American Christian church, which is not a monolith. And even though I wrote Original Sin is a Lie, love plenty of Christians, and there are sincere Christians in that world, but there are aspects of American Christianity that are extremely problematic. And one of them to me is this kind of, we have to build this kingdom of heaven on earth. And, the non-dualists say that's impossible. Good luck, because this is the peaks and valleys world. This is the duality world. This is the night and day. This is the cold, because of its polarity, because of its duality, it means that you are living in it. And, kind of to go back to Krishna and the Gita, which is foundational for a lot of this stuff too, who was an avatar. And, he tells Arjuna to go to the war. If you're familiar with the Gita, Arjuna hesitates. He's like this amazing archer who sees his brothers and cousins and his old archery teachers on the other side of the thing. And he goes, I don't want to fucking do this. I love those guys. And Krishna's like, you're Achilles. Lead the army. You're in the world. You're doing the work. But Krishna's kind of disclaimer is, he says, you're the actor in the role. So don't mistake your identity for the actor's identity. And I think that's kind of what some of that is sometimes, in terms of this, the God experiencing itself. I'm not like, it's a great idea. It's a nice idea. It's a really poetic image. And I do see that it has value, and I'm not saying it's all wrong. I'm just saying it seems like the transcendental, like capital T transcendental, capital R reality is so much, has a level of fullness and completeness and wholeness that is kind of, according to a lot of these mystics, that's what you're trying to get. It's not this is a rental. So that's how I'd put it, I guess. Yeah.
Figuring out where where we find that balance of the like peaceful acceptance of like, it's not a big deal, and like every interaction matters.
Totally.
Exactly. Every like child matters, every like smile or breakthrough moment or meaningful hug. Like there's such like a magic we can bring to each relationship, and people matter,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's a really tightrope to walk.
Yeah.
I think, because you can easily fall into, it all has such specialness and meaning and perfection and the imperfection. I mean, I guess is where you get some Zen, the action of non-action and emptiness of the wholeness. That the paradox is the only way to do it. The paradox is the only way to describe it, because if you're flat about that explanation, like for example, made a video about this, and it's very. I love both of these groups, and I think you guys are kind of in both of them with me. Frankly, I think I'm kind of in both of these groups, but I noticed over the past couple of years, like, so for example, kind of like the, kind of the psychedelic.
What a sidekick.
Spiritual grant. This is great. I love this. Mary's the queen of the show.
Yeah, order and chaos all together here.
Yeah, exactly. There better be a dog fucking up the mics.
Yeah.
The psychedelic, I have to put this very carefully because it's there's an immense amount of love that I have for these people. The psychedelic community, for example, I think is doing a lot of really good work. And I'm a big cheerleader of that world. I'm a big cheerleader of those people. I really love the facilitator integration people. I think that they are doing such a needed service. As a whole, I think that sometimes there is a level of hedonistic quality to that group.
Totally. And that's a huge conversation I'm here for.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, I'm not trying to be condemnatory. And by the way, there's some great parties. I will come out and drink some Dos Equis and, let's go. I like music. I like to dance and, whatever, talk to people. But, they have all this vitality, right, Mary? They have all this vitality and energy and, like, typically they're fit, and it's like, let's build some houses, let's scoop some food to some hungry people kind of thing. Yeah. And really quickly what comes up for me when I say that is like egoic. I'm not trying to be too judgy here, but I'm just being playful with it, I guess. And
well, it's a needed advocacy because it's so easy to be in that, like, what Yeshua said of like the robes and the tombs within, and just we're whitewashed, actors putting on the airs of enlightenment, and I'm at Burning Man and I'm an avatar. Well, and maybe, and hooray for you. And there's that fine line of where's the service, where's the real heart, where is it just spiritualized ego?
Yeah, and totally. And by the way, Matthew...
And not dissing Burning Man, I've been there, it's great. And there's a lot of bullshit there too, so...
And, no, it looks really fun. Also, Matthew, the author of Matthew said that Jesus didn't say whitewashed tombs. Anyway, we'll come back to that.
Okay, yeah, the corrections are welcome, please.
I'm a New Testament nerd.
Bring it on, man.
No, so, I think...
And the Paulian critiques I'm totally here for, and I want to go into that one later.
No, thanks.
Oh, no, come on, man.
No, but the hedonistic quality, some of these folks, they're healing wounds.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's what that is. That's at worst, it's a trauma response. And so I think that's cool. Like, you were caught up in, fundamentalism or whatever, and now you realize that, like, psilocybin is useful and you can meet people that are also warm and loving. Like, that's really cool. So, I'm cheerleader and critic, but also kind of to what you were saying too is like there's actually a level of like thinness to that that there's a whole new opening, there's a whole new layer that broadens up by incorporating service into that quality. It's like I've done food bank work for a while. We started doing meditation in prisons the last few years, and guys, I mean, look, let me know
the next time you go, please, man.
I'd be happy to share info about it. What I was gonna say was, I like drugs. Drugs are cool. I'm on them sometimes.
We have a name for the podcast episode.
I like drugs. Don't get me wrong, but it is a really good drug. When you leave the prison, after teaching meditation to people who can't leave. And you can, it's really profound. Yeah. And it's quite the day, the rest of the day.
What have been your greatest lessons from that, or greatest, like, profound moments?
There's like one story that's pretty good, which is, I guess you guys will be the judge of that. I've been going a few years now. I'm a okay meditation teacher. I'm not Chogyam Trungpa or whatever, but I'm getting there, and I have off days and I get tired and, things going on at family, work, whatever. It was just one of those weekends. You sign up, it's once a month. And so you don't choose. This is the day you to go. And I was kind of out of it, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and do it. and it's a women's prison that I go to in Lockhart, and there was about 12. There's anywhere from 2 to 20. It depends on what's going on at the prison that day. If there's other things going on, if they're at lunch. I mean, it's if they forgot to announce it. Anyway, bureaucracy is everywhere. But it was about, I don't know, 10 gals, and one super tatted, like, ex-Christian guy who'd never meditated before. And I'm leading the first sit, and I'm questioning myself the whole time. I'm just like, I don't know if this is working, kind of what the hell am I doing? And we come out, but there's a moment, if you guys have meditated with a group before, that you can feel it click. It's about 2-3 minutes in usually, or 5 minutes in, when it's kind of like, okay, now we're cooking, and it was one of those. And I came out of it, and, it was kind of like, okay, what came up for everybody? And this woman goes, she goes, I don't really know, but I love everyone. Or I can't remember exactly what she said. It's in my journal, but she said something like, well, it was pretty nice, and now I love everything. And I was just like, and it was like, those kind of moments where it's just like that. She needed that thing that, my 30% capacity, self-questioning, all the above, was able to serve her in that in some way. And she gave that right back to me, and so there's kind of that reciprocal quality to it, probably, I think, is the best answer. And so that's, it's just not to break my arm, but, having some kind of practice like that is really useful. It's selfish to serve, in that paradoxical way. And then the other thing, so coming back to the group criticism, or pointing out, too strong a word, criticism, but
calling forward of greatness.
Yes, exactly. The other group is the activist community, and kind of the progressive activist community, and whom I love, and I, consider myself a part of in some ways, and phone banked for Bernie 16, so I'm in that world a little bit. But I see some of those folks that have become embittered by that work, because it's a very taxing thing, especially in America, especially in this decade. There's wins that they make, but there's also a lot of suffering that they're coming face to face with, a lot of challenges. So for them, I want them to go to Costa Rica for a week and drink the tea, and come back into who they are, and have some joy, and have a dance or two, and then come back and then be really more empowered in a way. And so I think it's kind of a Venn diagram of those two groups. They're so similar, but right now I think, at least in the Austin community that I'm aware of, there's too much splitness between those two scenes, and I'd love to see them come together more.
Well, planting the seed, and however I can help in that.
Yeah.
And that's what this land is meant to be. And
it's pretty relevant to what you guys are doing, because Alien to Trade Development.
Totally.
It's great.
And, it also brings up a burden that's in my heart on the philanthropic side of what we intend to do here. And stating this out loud and desire, and also in accountability, make sure I follow through on it, is working with the formerly incarcerated people, particularly women. And because, with the assistance of a dear friend, shout out Kaya, for, her awareness around this, of how difficult it is for formerly incarcerated women in particular, because men can get labor jobs. We can go to an oil rig, we can find construction jobs. It's way easier. Women often get stuck in that loop. And we talk about the true essence of spirituality. Correct me here if my sources are wrong here, but as I understand, the disciples asked Yeshua once, what is true religion? And he said, take care of widows and orphans, and basically dropped the mic. And so that burden
lines
for
up.
Yeah,
I'm not sure the source either, but yeah.
Okay. So, aligning to that and following through on that, let's do that.
Yeah.
And I deeply believe that, society flourishes, and not to get too virtue signally, which this surely probably sounds like, but when we take care of women, good things happen.
Yeah.
Society just flourishes. We're in a feminine realm. The earth is a feminine place. And when we take care of that force, great things come forward.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well said. No, it's so true. And, I think relevant to kind of, we're all seeing this, mild to serious panic about the young men these days. And, it's like they protect the people that need protection. We need we need strong men. We're not saying don't be strong. We're saying don't run over people. We're saying protect those, the vulnerable. So, how can we engineer, avenues for those guys? Because they want to.
Yeah. Another stated goal in public accountability is around the boys to men's transformational experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and something that I'm sure you know.
Oh, do you know Chris Soy?
Chris Hoy?
Chris Soy?
I don't think so.
The wilderness poet is his artistic identity. And he's a brilliant writer, absolutely terrific writer. Check him out. But he also goes to Alaska. I think he's in Alaska more than Austin nowadays, doing young people trips and young men's trips, and it's very, very amazing work. So you should get connected.
Yeah, and please, and connecting the Campbellian dot to the transformational boys to men work.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around his expressions around that? If you have a viewpoint.
Oh, it's right in line with it. Yeah, I mean it's Luke Skywalker to say, I gotta clean the crops, Ben. I gotta get home. To there's no home. You have to get on the spaceship with the giant monkey lion and save the planet, you have to do that. So I love too Campbell's thing about the dragon is the internal, it's just, he's just so good.
Go a little deeper there, please.
Well, just all the medieval tales, he talks a lot about too, of like the knight and the dragon. We're not really told that in the context of those stories when we're younger, learning about those stories, that it's not actually a beast, it's your ego. The dragon is your ego. And the dragon is typically, what is it typically surrounded by? Gold coins, accumulation of material acquisition in a way that is not useful. And so, the braved, and it's a solo battle, typically, because it's an inner conflict. The yogi, speaking of the Gita, there's a lot of yoga commentaries about the Bhagavad Gita being an internal battle as well. Although scholars do believe that the Battle of Kurukshetra was real. But
go deeper there, please.
It's still symbolic, of course. It's God talking to man. Just the framework for the Gita and going to war, the internal and the external.
How do we do a good war in that effort?
Yeah, I think there's practices. Meditation, obviously, meditation, yoga, and the contemplative practices are extremely useful in identifying these aspects of ourselves. Service is another one. There's the 4 yogas in Hinduism. I write about in the book about how, in kind of American Judeo-Christianity, we don't really have this diversity of paths. It's kind of, and especially Southern American Christianity, Protestantism is like Jesus is the guy or you burn forever, and it's just so frustrating and so reductive. And in Hinduism, for example, they have, not only do they have a countless, degree of relationships with God and gods and deities and so on, but the 4 yogas I think are really helpful for Westerners because, for example, they are the Jnana path, Jnana yoga, or the Jnani, which is intellectual, and so that's kind of more solitudinous meditation, self-inquiry, undoing. It's Ramana Maharshi said neti, so not that. You're not that until what's left. That's a practice. Another one is bhakti or bhakti yoga, and the bhaktas are the lovers, and they're the poets and writers and dancers and singers, and they're the ones that get emotional in church or temple and feel God and see God in the janitor, and that's a path too. And there's funny interplay kind of between those two. I think Bhaktas think that Yanis are too cold, and Yanis think Bhaktas are too crazy and they need to sit down and meditate. Karma yoga is another one. So the yoga of action, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier, service. Feed people. Maharaji says feed people. How do I get enlightened, Maharaji? He said feed people. So he was a prescriber of karma yoga. And then the fourth yoga is called Raja yoga, and it's a little more ambiguous, I guess, because it's kind of like all three combined. And there's a funny, several different lineages will say ours is Raja yoga. Vivekananda says Ramakrishna's lineage is Raja yoga. Yogananda says Kriya yoga is Raja yoga. So there's kind of a playful, we got all three kind of thing. But I think you were talking about how do you fight the dragon. I think there are practices, there are processes to do that.
And in your personal life and how you've dealt with the dragon, is it a blending of all those? Is there something that comes forward that's been the greatest sword?
It's pretty blendy for me, to be honest. Yeah, I think it is. I'm kind of the extrovert introvert combo. I'm pretty extroverted, but I all good by myself, and I'm an only child, so I'm used to me, and service too, and it's just like that stuff. It'll yank you out of the modern of the late stage cap, of the doom scroll, of the it's like we all kind of need that. So yeah, I'm big fan of all of them. I think also I was talking about this on another pod recently, which is reading a lot of freaking books, man. I mean, not that I'm this huge academic, but
well, you're on the spectrum.
I'm a student. I'm a student. I don't say I'm a scholar because I don't, but I'm a student of scholarship, religious scholarship, and reading a lot of books really helps. I mean, it not only do you understand what these guys and gals are doing and what they're trying to get across, but just when you're actually reading the book, you're in a space, you're in a vibratory frequency that shares kind of what the author, where they were at, or what if it's a teacher that they're written, you're kind of in that space with the teacher. So books are huge.
When you talk about not taking on the name of a scholar and not kind of claiming that, I think about the Alan Watts speech around the unnameable, and how when we do reduce the divine into a word, we lose it. 5 colors makes a man or woman blind, right?
Yeah, totally.
And when we collapse it into something, it becomes prideful or becomes a title or whatever, and loses the juice. Totally.
No, you're right. I've accepted writer.
Yeah,
I'm cool with writer.
Yeah,
and that took a while.
Yeah. Well, let's go deeper there.
But putting a book out, it's kind of
it's huge.
It was a before and after.
A lot gets started, few get printed.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But there's a few more rolling around that it's just the next one. You're going, am I going to do it again?
So
same me,
Yeah. So where's your heart at for what's next in the world of Bob Peck?
Well, it's a little bit what we've been talking about, basically. Kind of embodied non-duality. I think, again, I think non-duality is so practical. It's so useful in this world of thinking how, the depression on Threads, for example, and X, it's just outrage machine. It's just every day people open up the thing. Instagram is a little better for me, and TikTok is a little better for me. Instagram is at least some people's paintings and shit, and some funny videos, and then the news that, and I'm not saying don't watch the news either. You be informed, but Threads, to me, my Threads is just this outrageous thing happened, and it's Jesus, and it's so, I think so many people are walking around in that state of just granted, our political system is a madhouse right now, but I think that non-duality is extremely mystic, what I'm kind of calling mystic philosophy, and non-dual philosophy, like the not two, right? The mystics, the esoterics, the people who see God and everything in themselves and in every being. That's the way out. It's not this lofty bumper sticker, whatever. It's actually, it really is useful and practical for mental health and inner well-being. And, and I can hear the Prague activists going, well, but do something. Well, they do. All of them do. All the mystics are extremely active in world history. And so they have kind of this dismissive quality of the world, and yet here they are, which is so refreshing. So I think, they're kind of like, the image I keep getting is like a ship in a storm and like holding onto the mast, and the mast to me is the mystics of history and what they were trying to do. And that kind of embodied yoga. Vivekananda calls it engaged detachment.
Yeah. You dropped a few names along the path there that I'm not familiar with, and again, respect and appreciation to your devotion. And when you go into some of the other lesser known mystics that have really hit you, that you feel like should be more known, who do you want to shout out there?
Okay, it's got to be Milarepa. Shout out to the mountain yogi of Tibet. He's going to be a big part of the next book, I think, too. He lived in about 1040, I think is when he was born. So about 1,000 years ago in Tibet. Do we have a minute? Do you guys want to I'll give you the short version of the story.
Do the long one.
I could give you the hour. We're not going to do an hour.
Well, not quite an hour, but we can give us the medium.
I'll give you the short to medium, which is, he is, not only is he an incredible teacher, and he's actually a folk poet, which I'll get to, but his narrative, his life story is so profound and so human and so accessible that he's just, you can't help but love the guy. His father was a rich man in Tibet who was very well liked in the community, kind of in the mountains of northern India, what is that, Western China, in the Himalayas. And his father died young. Milarepa was about 7, and I think he had a younger sister, and then his mom was widowed. And the estate went to the evil aunt and uncle. Speaking of RPG earlier, it's kind of like that Disney movie story. And they essentially almost enslave the family. They basically take all the money, and enrich their own family, and they're kind of like Milarepa. The boy Milarepa is like an indentured servant to the evil Tios, and I think he turns 13, and the mother, who has just lost it, says, "Go into the mountains. Now you're about to be a man. Go into the mountains and learn something that you can take revenge and get our stuff back." And, this is at 1,000, 1,100 in Tibet. If you go in the mountains and sit up there with some lamas, you'll learn some spells. You'll be able to affect matter in some way. I'm mystic enough to be pretty open to that. And so he does. He goes up and he learns, essentially kind of some black magic from. Before Buddhism in Tibet, there's a tradition called the Bon tradition, which is kind of it's like an ancient shamanic tradition of Tibet. And it has some relics of the Bon tradition have survived into Tibetan Buddhism. And into Dzogchen has some of that as well, but it's contemporary Tibetan Buddhism is still flavored by some of the Bon ancient practices. And so it's kind of an animistic, shamanistic tradition. So he learns some of that. He comes down the mountain, and there's a big wedding festival for the evil aunt and uncle's, one of their sons. And they're all at this big house, and Milarepa conjures a hailstorm, and the hailstorm appears, destroys the crops, crushes the house, and it kills 30-something people. the evil aunt and uncle survive. They come back later. But he is immediately filled with remorse and regret, and kind of goes off into the mountains as a renunciant to, essentially, atone for his sins. And that's part one of the story. I mean, it's an incredible story. He eventually meets a master. He meets several, but he winds up at this very famous Buddhist teacher named Marpa, who is a translator of text from Indian Buddhism, and he was one of the initial bringers of this particular line of Buddhist spiritual techniques and practices from India into Tibet. So he's called Marpa the translator. Mm-hmm. He was translating the Indian Sanskrit into Tibetan, and he studied under Naropa and Tilopa, who are incredible teachers in their own right. So it's this really profound lineage, and Milarepa is just kind of this vagrant wandering around the mountains, and Marpa has a dream the night before. Dreams are a huge part of Tibetan Buddhist spirituality, where a Buddha comes to him. And so Marpa knows how special this guy is. And a fun side note, when Milarepa meets Marpa, they drink a beer, which surprised me. You don't think Tibetan monks in the mountains having a drink, but I think I was drinking a beer when I read that, and I was like, all right, guys.
I'm on the path.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. This Dos Equis. Cheers, guys. But Marpa is extremely cold to him. And he's kind of that stereotypical, tough guru, tough teacher. And he actually, Marpa has become a wealthy landowner, actually, because of his texts and translations. He has a lot of students. He has a family. He has a wife and children. And he would give him building projects. That's what you guys need. You guys need a vagrant to wander. You can build stuff. He builds towers. And so Marpa would say, build a tower right here. So 6 years, Milarepa barehandedly builds these like stone towers for Marpa. Doesn't get a lick of teaching. And he would say, not right there, when it would be done. He'd go, over there. And you have to take it down and build it. And he did this for years. And the last one is actually still standing. So you can go and see it. I haven't been there, obviously, but you can go see it on Google Images and check out the last handmade Milarepan tower. He's about to leave. He's like, this is ridiculous. I'm getting aches on my shoulders and all this stuff. And Marpa finally says, it's a dramatic few scenes, but he finally says, it's all been an act. You're my beloved disciple, and here's all the teachings. And the reason I had to do this was because your karma was so black from your murderous past. You killed a lot of people, buddy, whether or not it was justified or not, And so that's on your karmic thing. So I was trying to help you wash that away. And now that you know the teaching, go off into the mountains and, practice up there. Marpa doesn't give those instructions to anyone else. There's other students of Marpa who are meditating in the monastery with him. Milarepa is told to go off into the peaks of Tibet. Repa means robe. And so he's basically in a layer or two in the snowiest heights of the planet Earth for about 12 years. And so not only is it miraculous that he survives, we believe, his students believe, his lineage believes that he became a bodhisattva, that he became awakened up there. And so that's part 2. And then the part 3 is the caves. I'll wrap it up here, but essentially there's all these great moments of like, he's in the cave and like he'll go off and, try to collect some wood or something. He'll come back and there's demons in the cave, and are they projections? Are they real? And kind of what he does to dispel them. Hunters would come and find him and they would think he was a ghost.
How does he dispel the demons?
There's a really famous one with 5 demons. gosh, I can't remember the exact name. I'm sorry. I'm still getting more proximate to him, but he starts preaching to them, and they laugh, and and then he realizes that they're his own mental thing, so he loves them, and they start to disappear. And then the last one is the biggest one, and it won't go away no matter what he's doing. Everything, he can't get rid of it, and it looks like it's going to eat him, and he just puts his head in the mouth, and it disappears, and just surrendered to it. And and so that's one little moment of his mythic stories. Last two things about him. One is he gives us all these poems because he would apparently in the Tibetan language, it's very it's a lot easier to improvise than English. So he doesn't write anything down. He doesn't give teachings. When they essentially realize he's still up there years later, he comes down. He's kind of like this Gandalf, kind of Gandalf the White type figure. He's like the awakened after all the meditation. And they would say, "What did you learn?" And he would go da, 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 and he would start singing these songs. So there's a book I read, Life of Milarepa, which is the way in. So highly recommend Life of Milarepa. It's a 1500s Tibetan Buddhist monk biography of Milarepa 500 years prior. So not super accurate, but good, very good. And then there's all these other like collections of his songs. So 100,000 songs in Milarepa, and he would come down. He's this folk poet, and so apparently in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a rich tradition of scholarly poets and kind of academic poets and textual. That's not Milarepa's school. He just comes down off the mountain and gives you the juice. He says, I'll give you one, which is he says, "All buildings end in destruction. All acquisitions end in disbursement. All meetings end in separation. All births end in death. So, therefore, find a teacher." Now I'm paraphrasing. "Find a teacher as soon as you can and meditate on the Dharma, as quickly as possible." Essentially, there's this urgency to him. To kind of there's a core quality of his story, which is to become awakened in this incarnation. Can I really do it? Can I really do it in this one? There's in even other schools of Buddhism, there's this kind of gradual, no, we'll get there, and he has this kind of tenacity that's unique. That's my big Milarepa story. The last thing I'll say, the epilogue here to tease you guys and the listeners is, there are handprints in the cave. So if you go to you can see the caves that he meditated in. They know where it was. There's pushed in hands into the rock. There's no real scientific explanation for this. What, did he get a hot thing? No. He pushed in the cave. He was Neo up there, showing us that material reality is bendable and there's no spoon. So, pretty wild. Check him out. That's my commercial for 1,000-year-old Lama. He's really great. His poems are great. And, I guess for me, the reason why I'm interested in these kinds of people is because they reinforce one another in some way. It's like knowing about him validates the previous understanding of mystics and their teachings. It's like there's another one that has very similar cohesive ideas around the transitory way of things. He's also extreme on compassion. He says, "I've meditated so long on compassion that I forgot the difference between myself and others." Loving kindness, bodhisattva. So, they kind of in some ways reinforce one another. Alongside just having riveting stories. There's been tons of movies of his story in kind of cinema history, and definitely in Asian cinema. Which how can you sum that up? But there have been recent ones too. He's just not that well known in America. So, I'm happy to blab about him on a Monday afternoon in in the woods in Austin.
Well, epic blabbing, and
Thank you for letting me.
yeah, my pleasure. And thank you, Milarepa, for the arduous and wild journey that you went on to discover the great truth that you expressed. And when you talk about cohesiveness between traditions, that's a point that always fascinates me. And the perspective that, Yeshua traveled to the East and studied with the Lamas and have records there. And, there's a bit of a controversial history there, but
sure.
I see more for than against. I forget the name of the Russian scientist that went over there and found the documents and then this type of stuff, which I think is really cool.
Nordovich.
Yeah, there you go. So when you reflect on the similarities and the cohesiveness and where you go with the manger things and perspective on the East meets West and the what Yeshua really stood for as far as you understand it, with what the mystics stood for as far as you understand it, where do you go with that? Where do you find similarity and difference in that?
Yeah, Yogananda believed Jesus studied in India. I do write about it in my book briefly. It's not very Bible scholarly. Bible scholars, one of the issues with Bible scholars is, for me as a mystic, I guess, is they're a little too likelihood calculation. It is useful, especially in American Christian land. Scholarship, the lens of scholarship is useful to say historical likelihood. They're always looking at historicity, they're looking at archaeology, they're looking at textual, they're looking at likelihood. There's not really good evidence that he went to India in texts. We haven't found it yet. But there is this thing called the lost years of Jesus, right? So in all the stories of the synoptics and John, the Gospels of his life, there's in film we call it a jump cut. He was 12 and then 30. Nothing in there. So what happened? Was he just with Joseph, making tables? By the way, it seems more likely he was a stonemason.
Really?
There's no trees in Nazareth or Sepphoris.
Okay.
A lot of rocks though, so they were probably working with stones. Anyway, it's also a very diverse, that the Judean province of the ancient Roman Empire, which is where Jesus was based in that incarnation, it's a lot of cultures. That is the Jewish kind of region. But the Samaritans are next door. Rome is just across the Mediterranean, so there's Roman government and infrastructure there. And 300 years prior, Alexander the Great gets to India. So there are trade routes all over to the east. China to Egypt is also right there, obviously. So there's a really beautiful melting pot mixing, what is it, like, not melting pot but fruit salad, it's like there's a cool, it's a great period in human civilization in some ways because of that the exchange of ideas and the kind of the explosion, I think, philosophically, of a lot of those cultures mixing and matching. So it's not preposterous, Bible scholars, that he would have gone, he could have hopped on a caravan. It's not that crazy. Spiritually, Yogananda says, I think it's Matthew 2:2, which is one of the two birth narratives here. He says, they say wise men from the East, specifically. Mm-hmm. That's in the text. Wise men from the East came to honor. And so Yogananda says those were rishis from India who got the info that very high being was showing up, and let's go honor that. And, not preposterous. And so the way Yogananda kind of contextualizes it is that he was repaying their visit. He was repaying their kind of blessing on his birth and kindness, and to also learn God realization there, right? And bring it back. And
that'd be a fun homecoming party.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows, unfortunately, we don't have much on that period. For anyone that's interested, I like to recommend, he's a Swami and a monk. He's a Franciscan monk. I'm not sure. George Abbott Burke. He's also, I believe his Swami name is Nirmalananda, but his website is ocoy.org. It's Original Christianity, Original Yoga. So this guy, he's been a Christian for 60 years, and he's been into India. He's studied with the greats for many years, and he wrote a book about Jesus in India. He's there's a lot now, but I'm most comfortable recommending him for anyone that's interested in.
Is there a particular focus or insight that he speaks to as far as his experience there?
Well, I mean, I think, for example, he also put out a book recently on the Gospel of Thomas, which I was playing around with, but for me, there's probably not enough for a single book project. I do have a chapter on Gospel of Thomas in my book, but for example, Abbot George Burke mentions how the Gospel of Thomas, essentially sounds like the Upanishads. Guys, I mean, are you familiar with Thomas?
From a decent level,
yeah.
And speaking to particularly a verse that stands out for me is what if you create what's inside you, it'll save you. If you don't, it'll destroy you. And that
Exactly.
life purpose and the depth and the dragon, like I feel those elements in there.
Totally.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah, I think Thomas has some bangers, and it's extremely cohesive with Eastern mysticism, and Gnostics, and that's where you get into kind of the Gnostic, I guess, controversy, which is maybe a whole nother episode. But there's a level of cohesion between what kind of some of us would consider like the authentic teachings of Jesus. Sometimes I'll put it like that. It's like, what's the real teaching of Jesus? It has a lot of commonality with the Eastern masters, and part of that is once you take off the politics of the New Testament, which I try to do in my book, then you get to the bare Jesus, which is just pure love and pure awakening. But then also you add Thomas into that, and it's like, okay, this is practically Vedic philosophy at this point, So, I'm happy to propose the hypothesis that Jesus went to India. I'm hesitant to say he was here at this time. We'll see. Maybe we'll find some more info.
Well, speaking of your writings, Original Sin is a Lie, available everywhere in the description. And thank you for the signed copy today. I find a lot of value enjoying that and gratitude. And let's go deeper, man. Like, that's quite a statement, and it's one that I feel deeply is resonant for me. And when I look back at Christian history and the history of Rome and Paul, and we can go there or avoid there, whatever feels right. But it's right. I don't know how far are we in here. We're about an hour in, so probably another 10 minutes or so. How much more you have? Okay, cool.
I got about 10, 15.
Cool. So I think one of the greatest, most important subjects that exists in the world is one that we're touching on or getting some great depth into, is like, what's the truth of the story, right? And what is what has the divine fucking said to us, and how do we listen to that and integrate it and embody it and express it in a really embodied way, without pride and bullshit getting in the way? And where has the propaganda and the control and all the machinery of the monsters of reality, gripped us with shame and fear and guilt and all the insanity of that? And when we look back at Rome and how we got here and all of that, how do you deconstruct this machine, and how do you see us getting forward out of this age of religion into the more embodied place, and if that aligns into the core truth of your text of the original sin being, to me, one of the greatest spikes into consciousness?
Wasn't it ever?
Yeah, like where do you go with all that?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And I mean, you're really kind of summing up what I feel like is kind of my life's work in some way. It's many of our life's work. We all are in this. We're all in it, but it's really encouraging to see, kind of a movement, a collective of people, and maybe that's the echo chamber of the algo, but probably not. It does seem like people are kind of getting clued in.
Yeah, the fire's loose.
The fire's loose.
Yeah.
It's come through creative works over the years. It's come through, for longer than more recently, but the internet is helping, I think, mostly in terms of spreading that. There's a really great image by Brother David Steindl-Rast, which I'm so mad that I discovered it after my book came out, because it sums up my book almost perfectly as in a single premise, which is, he says, all religions come from mysticism, or a mystic master, if you will. He says, it's like a volcano. When the initial individual has that connection to the divine, it is an explosion. It's tangible. It's unavoidable, and that's what all these founders of religions, many of whom didn't try to found anything. It explodes and comes down the mountain, and it's just, here this person is, who's not a person anymore. The undoing of the person. And then over the centuries and over a millennia, that same lava becomes cold, dead rock. And I think that that's such an apt metaphor for what happens. I mean, unfortunately, in the Jesus story, it happens very quickly. There's a lot of stuff on Paulianity, which I do write about Paul in the book. He's not as bad as the rap he's been getting lately in deconstruction.
I gotta hear more. Professor Jang's been rocking my world on this one, man. I'm on a real anti-Paul kick lately.
Yeah, we talked about this. Okay,
yeah.
So and
can you save Paul?
Well, Paul is human, and we do need to yank him off of the.
But what if he's just like a double agent Jewish Roman spy sent from the devil to destroy Yeshua's message?
I don't think that's true.
I'm not ready to go quite that hard, but I'm going pretty hard lately.
Let's definitely be open to that, right?
Okay, cool.
But the reason why I think Paul is actually more or less, supervillain than deconstruction cram is painting him lately is because, we half of the New Testament is his letters, right? So we got 4 Gospels in there. There's a few other texts, and then letters from Paul to the early church communities. Who was this guy? So he was a Pharisee. I feel like I need to go back and explain Jesus and who the Pharisees are, but
we'll give the audience some credit there. They're caught up on that one. But,
okay. Yeah. So Jesus is killed in 35. The first century is a powder keg, basically. And I'll be as quick as possible. Thanks, Miller Epa, for
we got to be building towers for thousands of years.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Jews don't like to be governed by the Romans in the first century. There's a lot of pain, and there's legit planning to overthrow the Romans during Jesus's period.
A lot of zealots.
The zealots are active. They're good with knives. The Essenes are who John the Baptist was probably an Essene. Some folks and some critics and commentators will suggest Jesus was. I personally don't think he was, but I do think he was aware of them. They're a little more dualistic than I consider Jesus a non-dual mystic master. The Essenes are off in the wilderness. They're in the mountains, actually, outside of Jerusalem. Writing text. That's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Those are Essene texts. So they're writing about kind of the army of light versus the army of darkness, right? Very kind of heaven on earth stuff, kind of what we were talking earlier. It's like they were very literally apocalyptic. They were, it's called eschatology, end times type shit. I believe Jesus was talking about an internal end time of the egoic identity. But the Essenes are more actually, no, we got an army. They got a militia. So they overthrow the Romans in the late 60s. Paul is killed in middle 60s. The disciples of Jesus start to get killed in the 60s in Jerusalem. It gets to be pretty dark. The Jews overthrow the Romans in 69 to 71 CE, and they control the city for a couple of years. But here's the problem. It's the Roman army. They're insane. They come back. They siege the city. It is horrifying.
Yeah, the brutality of the Roman Empire was limitless.
It was limitless, and it was singularly directed at Jerusalem for that period, for those couple of years. Rivers of blood killed all the innocents. I mean, it was heartbreaking. they destroyed the temple. So there's this massive existential shift in Judaism in that period, where the temple at that time. Now, when you say temple, when the Jewish community talks about temple, they're talking about a synagogue in their community. But in the first century, when they're talking about temple, they're talking about the temple. King Herod built this magnificent structure, which was the symbolic spiritual home of their religion. So when Rome destroyed that, what do we do now? And so that is the immediate period in which the Gospels were written. Mark is right when that happened. Matthew is a couple of years after that happened. Luke is a few more years beyond that. The dates are about 70 to 75 Mark. Matthew is 70 to 80, 75 to 80. Luke is around 80, 85 to 90. And Luke is specifically written outside of the Jewish homeland. So the Lucan gospel is not as concerned with Jewish rules and regulations, and Jesus is not the next Jewish prophet in Luke. He's the next Jewish prophet in Mark and Matthew, big time. And then by the time you get to John, which is 100 to 120, he's the king of the earth, and it's its own thing. I mean, it's right there proto-Christian with John. John has some mystical, symbolic beauty in it, but they're four very distinct books. They're very different. So that's kind of my TLDR and handful of classes at UT on the Bible. But important, right? And it's almost surprising to me that American Christians aren't as aware of that historical context. I mean, it was a crazy period for those Jewish writers and those Jewish communities to be putting this out. So who's Paul, right? Paul is a Pharisee, which you had the Sadducees, who were the temple Jews. They were the religious leaders under the temple. And then the temple was destroyed. So they go away. Kind of sects 2, 3, and 4, if you will, were the Pharisees, who were kind of like traveling preachers. They were kind of but they were flashy. They were like televangelisty kind of. And that's the playfulness that Jesus has with them in the Bible, right? He's saying, don't be like the Pharisees. They're the secondary sect. And then kind of the tertiary sect is the Jesus-following Jews. The fourth is the Essenes. There's probably more, and there's probably nuances. Sorry, any professors.
Smoke them in the comments.
Me. Yeah. Rip me up. But there's a animosity between the Pharisaical Jews and the Jesus-following Jews in that period that's heightened because the Sadducees, who controlled the religious institution, are now gone, thanks to the temple being destroyed. The best example of this is, and this is important to Paul because Paul was a Pharisee. So there's a great book that's a reference. Don't read it cover to cover, but if you're interested in this kind of stuff, it's called Gospel Parallels. I bought it for whatever, New Testament 325. It takes events in the Gospels and just vertical reads them. That's what Bible scholars do. In church, you read it A to Z. He was born in a manger, and then he came back, and it's oh wow, okay, they all sound similar. Scholars compare the events. So, to give you just a quick glimpse of the sectarian heightened tension is okay. Mark and Matthew are in the Jewish homeland writing about, they're essentially trying to say, hey, come over here. Because now there's a power void, there's a vacuum, there's an existential crisis happening to the Jewish people. They don't know where to go. Jesus following Jews are growing, Pharisees are growing. In Mark, Jesus does call out the Pharisees a little bit. In Luke, he calls out the Pharisees a little bit more. I believe he does in John, but more importantly in the Synoptics. In Matthew, he goes off.
Yeah.
Gospel Parallels, it's almost comedic because it's Mark, he has a little comment about them being hypocritical.
Yeah.
Luke, he says two comments.
Snakes and
Matthew,
synagogue of Satan.
Dens of vipers.
Yeah.
You whitewashed tombs.
Right.
And I didn't ever know what that meant. It means that you're pretty on the brick, but inside is a bunch of skeletons.
Yeah.
And dead bodies because you're that evil.
That's the trumped up spirituality we see today in a lot of ways we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's very clear from a historical standpoint that Matthew's extended commentary, Jesus' condemnation of the Pharisees, the extended version of it is a creation of the Methian author in order to antagonize the competing sect for this new opportunity of obtaining followers.
Interesting. So not his authentic words.
It doesn't jive with the same guy said that, who
right.
also said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do," to his killers. He's being murdered, and he says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." I mean, that's the Avatar's essence. That's the essence of the awakened being, is unconditional love despite immense suffering and pain and brutality.
But I like badass Jesus, man. So cool.
I think it's more badass.
They're both incredible.
The veil is just unraveling at the feet of the cross.
I'm really with you there, and I know we're getting tight on time here. And this has been awesome.
It's been really great. So I mean, I guess maybe I'll tease the Paul thing, which is Paul was a Pharisee.
Mm-hmm.
He's on the road to Damascus to actually shit on Jesus following Jews, and he believes he has what I believe is a mystical experience. He sees a light that's categorized in different ways, and he says, "What is this?" And it says, "It is I, Jesus, whom you are persecuting." It's the famous line. And he has a genuine conversion experience. And so he's healed in Damascus, in the very community that he was going to criticize. And the reason, again, kind of with Paul, I'll just wrap up here, which is we have all of his letters, right? Well, I write about this in the book. Authenticity of Pauline letters varies immensely. We have early letters and later letters. And back in the last 1600 years, we thought all 13 were legitimately Paul. Well, Bible scholarship studies the freaking consonants and punctuation of these things. They're different writers. And so a lot of the later Paul, they're called the pastoral epistles, actually. They're TI. It's 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. That's later church fathers who are writing as though Paul wrote it in order for their own political thing. So that's where you get women should be quiet in church. That's where you get slaves should obey their masters. What's authentic Paul? Corinthians, Galatians 3:28 is, "There's neither Jew nor Gentile, male nor female, slave nor free. We are all one in Christ Jesus." The bangers are from the early period, and the hypocrisy and sadly, cosmically tragic, ironically, the most quoted are the later, lesser men pretending to be them. And I think that's the case with Jesus too. So, there's nuance to it, but I don't think Paul was a Buddha.
Yeah.
But I think, he played an important role in spreading the word, and I think he had a sincere appreciation.
Okay.
So,
well, would love to go deeper there. I want to see you and Aaron Abke and Professor Jang.
I love Aaron. I saw you guys were friends, so
yeah,
connect sometime.
Yeah, and shout out Josh Del Sol for the invitation into the Awaken Christ Within Summit. Super cool. A werewolf, Alex out there, and yeah, seeing how we decipher all of this and come into the inner experience, right? Yeah. And to the last thing you said, of we're all one in Christ Jesus. Yes, we're all one, love. And for me and my inner experience of seeking into this for 20 years or so is how do we stay in that unified state? And how do we truly have that inner awakening that Yeshua, Jesus, so powerfully walked with, and the other mystics have so amazingly walked with? And from one aspiring mystic to another, man, I truly appreciate your presence and your work.
Cheers.
Original Sin is a lie. I love
lie.
it. I love it. I love it. Thank you again for the signed copy. Links are in the bios and in the comments, so make sure you pick that up and support an epic mystic on the path.
Thanks, Jackson.
Where else can we find you? What else would you like to close with, man?
Well, Original Sin is a lie. People ask me what it means. It just means you're not dirty. So it's that simple. I'm not trying to be this big, that's what I've been contextualizing the whole episode. I'm just trying to say, hey, the Original Sin is a lie. Doesn't come from Jesus. It's the complete 180 degree opposite. You are beloved. You can't escape the love of the divine, of the eternality, no matter how hard we try. So, cheers. Salud. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Mic drop moment. Appreciate you, Bob. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
You did so good at the end there. You chilled out. That was awesome. All right, everybody. Appreciate you. Like, comment, follow, all the freaking things. And appreciate you all. Have an awesome day. Peace.